Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, April the 13th already, 2021. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday with Thom. Tuesday with Thom, of course, is brought to you by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl customizes solutions to issues of leadership, access and inclusion, economic development, and communication. Best Girl creates the solution that fits your needs. You want to look up Best Girl, go to bestgirl.com if you want more information. So I hope your April is going well, and the many storms, man, we've had some storms already, have not caused you, I hope they've not caused you any harm. I empathize you if it has. And just remember, if you can fix it, replace it, do it over or do without it, it'll all be okay in the long run. I want to give a couple of shout outs this morning, at least one shout out. And the first is a happy birthday to my dad, Thom Gossom, who has reached 96 years of age. I'm proud of him for reaching that milestone, although I think it's pretty cool for the life he has led. My dad was a wonderful dad, is a wonderful dad. He provided for us. He was always working for us. He was always had two jobs during the week and then a plumbing job on the weekend, just so we could go to a private school for 12 years. Education was my dad valued that he went to the 6th grade before he had to start working full time. And then he went to the Army and he got his GED when he got out of the Army. And when I started playing football in high school, he said we had to have a talk about my priorities. And because I was the oldest and I was the oldest of the cousins and the sisters and all, and I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility to be educated. My dad has always been an inspirational figure in my life. I can quote the many things he taught me just in little sayings, like when I asked him about, we had a really deep, bad snow in Birmingham once, and my parents lived on a hill incline. And so I called them later because nobody went to work that day. And I said, Mom, let me speak to Dad. And she said, he's not here. I said, what do you mean he's not there? She said, he's gone to work. I said, how did he get to work? She said, he left here walking about 3 o'clock this morning. And I asked him later that day, I said, man, you went to work today? And he told me something. He's told me a lot of things I've never forgotten. But what he told me was, if you don't work, they don't pay you. I ran into a prejudice for the first time from a coach playing football when I was in high school. It's the first time I had been faced with, I think, just direct prejudice. And I sat down with my dad and talked about it. And he said, look, son, you're just passing through. You're on your way to somewhere else. You can deal with him for a little while. I've always remember that. I want to say thank you, Pop. I'm glad you're still around. I love you and happy birthday. Okay, we're going to move on to our roundtable guests, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. And then we've got a special G-List guest today, Pat Eddington, a woman with many, many stories to tell. So we look forward to visiting with her this morning. So let's go to the roundtable guests and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards. Barbara Wallace Edwards is from Mobile, Alabama. As a matter of fact, Pat Eddington, who is our guest, is from Mobile, Alabama, and they were sharing Mobile stories before we actually went on the air. So we'll have to hear some of that. Barbara, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you today?
I am doing well, and I see that you're in a different location, and
yes.
There are no, let me knock on that wood.
That's right. Let's knock on some wood.
Doesn't seem to be any issues with your internet this morning. So now we know it's AT&T.
Absolutely. They're the culprit. So we're going to have to get some things worked out with them. But thank you.
What's happening with you this morning?
Well, Thom, I'm starting out the day by honoring my mother. It has been 14 years today since my mother passed away. So it used to be a really sad day for me, but today I'm doing something in honor of my mother, and I'm going to try to do that every year to do something that honors her. So I'm going to look for ways that I can serve others today.
Well, good.
That's kind of what I'm, starting my day out with. But I also want to talk about two icons that we lost on last week. First is the Prince of Edinburgh, Duke of Edinburgh, who who passed away on last week at the age of 99.
Wow.
And rapper, actor, DMX also passed away. So we lost two great icons on last week. DMX, whose name was Earl Simmons, was only 50 years old. So that was a sad situation. But,
what happened to him?
Actually, it was a result of a drug overdose.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
such a sad situation. Yes, I've never been a big fan of rapping, but his music was, he had a huge following, so many fans. So I think that has really touched a lot of people.
Yeah, I've heard of him, but not really familiar with his music, what have you. But certainly we will keep him in his family.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
And also your mother, and I know how that is. My mom passed be 21 years this year.
Wow.
And,
wow.
She and my dad were married 49 years. They were 1 year away from 50 years.
Wow. Yeah, my parents were married 53 years. So yeah, they were together a long time.
They don't make them like that anymore.
They don't. They really don't. You're absolutely right. Yeah, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth were married 70 years. Can you believe that? Actually, I think it was over 70 years.
Wow.
So we had been together for a very long time.
Okay. What else you got for us?
Oh, really not much else going on. Today I've been following the news, watching a little bit of that Derek Shelvin trial, and that has really angered me.
Yeah.
It's tough to watch.
It really, you can't watch it for a while, after a while, because then I don't know how the jury's going to decide, but I'll just say that if you've got your knee on somebody's neck and they stop moving, they stop talking, they're just laying there prone, you probably want to take your knee off their neck to make sure that they're still alive.
Absolutely. I don't know. I don't have no idea what could have been going on in his mind that day, Shelvin's mind, but that.
Well, I'll tell you what I think was going on, not only in his mind, but in the mind of the woman who killed the young man the other day.
Right. Yes.
And I'll just say this, and you guys know me, and I'm not a biased individual, but if in both of those situations, had those victims been white men,
yes, they
would still be living.
Absolutely. White, period.
Right.
Whether men or women, I think you're absolutely right.
They don't, there's this thing I've run into with some police officers where it's, the attitude is basically, boy, you better do what I tell you.
Yes.
And I stopped being a boy a long time ago.
Absolutely.
And I stopped doing what I was told if it wasn't in my best interest.
Right.
So, and the guy told the cops he was afraid to get out of the car. And now we see why.
Right. Yeah, that happened with Dante Wright. And then the gentleman that was the lieutenant in the Army, that was terrible.
I saw that.
That was also very difficult to watch. I was angered just watching how that officer treated that woman.
But think about this. This is now that we have cameras.
Yes.
When we didn't have cameras, it was the officer's word.
Right.
And that was golden.
Right.
And there was always a saying when I was growing up that, my dad had to talk with me about how to deal with police officers, but then there was also the thing of young men being killed and because they came up with a knife that hadn't existed beforehand. So
right.
It's the world we're in. I think a lot of people get it. A lot of people want to help deal with it, and then there's some people who still think that that we're just making all this up.
Oh, yeah. Yes. There are still people trying to make excuses for every one of those situations.
Yeah, they were drug addicts. So.
Yeah, exactly. They were drug addicts, or had they not resisted and they followed the officer's orders, it would have never happened. Well, again, like you say, if they had been white, it never would have happened.
Exactly. Well, let's go to Mychal Walker and see what he's got going on this morning. Mychal Walker is from Atlanta, Georgia. He's the president of the Walker Agency of Full Service Insurance Brokerage. Mychal, what's happening in your world, man? You hadn't got stopped by any cops lately, have you?
No, I try to avoid police officers, especially if you're 6'1", 225 pounds, you are immediately perceived as a threat. So I try and make sure I avoid them as much as possible.
I hear you. What's going on with you?
Well, I wanted to talk and share with our audience that, in this time of COVID, and I know COVID is in the news, but it's still front and center, a lot of people that have suffered in unemployment, involuntarily become unemployed. And that's the question is, what do you do about your benefits at that time? Because you normally lose it. And everybody's familiar with COBRA. Well, in the new COVID relief package that was signed, there's a provision in there that allows COBRA to be subsidized by the relief package for 6 months. For those people who have lost their jobs and are unemployed and they need health insurance, you can apply for COBRA and have your payments paid for 6 months, according to the new relief package. And what you have to do is contact your insurer and let them know that you want to apply for the subsidy so that you can maintain your health insurance. Now, there's always a kicker or a but. And what that is that the forms and the processes are not finalized yet by the IRS or the Department of Labor. However, the good news is that from April 1st to the end of September, you can get your COBRA premium subsidized. So keep track of any claims and bills and what have you. Once they get those processes in place, you can apply for and get it taken care of.
Good deal, man.
That's good news.
Yeah, very much so. I want to, I'll just say to the audience out there, man, if you got some questions about insurance or about some of the things that are going on in our country today regarding the COVID and the relief package and so on and so forth, Mychal Walker's your guy. Yes. He knows that stuff, and he knows
he does.
Out. He studies it. As a matter of fact, he's where I go. Hey, Mychal, can you tell me about this? Mychal,
right.
Tell me how I get my PPP loan forgiven. Hey, Mychal, tell me about this EDIM.
He's the man. He is the
man.
And
I have to say, he readily volunteers the information. And
yes.
So I'm going to thank him publicly here because he has been a lifesaver for me. And I think anybody who needs some information is a perfect source. Mychal, what else you got for us?
Well, the only other thing I like to bring to people's attention, and probably you heard about this, but this morning the FDA has temporarily put a halt on the administration of Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And about maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I may have mentioned, you may recall, that there were some blood clots that formed in people, and that was overseas. Well, they approved it here in the U.S., but since that time, it has happened here. Now, they say it's a very rare occasion, but one occasion is not rare enough. That's right. So now it has been halted until they can figure out what caused that. And now the question is being asked, which is what I thought should have been asked prior to, why wasn't it discovered in clinical trials?
Right.
But now that's what the FDA is asking. So those of you who wanted to get the J&J because it was a one-shot deal, you may want to hold off on that and just go ahead and go with the Pfizer and Moderna and deal with the side effects.
Okay. Yeah, there was actually even one female, I think, that actually passed away as a result of the blood clot. So it can be dangerous.
That is correct. Yes, absolutely.
I got the Moderna, and fortunately, I'm gonna knock on wood again today. I had a little swelling from the first shot, and I was sore that first day, and it went away. And the second shot, I didn't have anything. So
that's great.
Hopefully they had some medicine in that thing that they shot at me because nothing happened. But I think what happens is when you get your shots, you get a little bit bolder in terms of going out and doing things. But I still wear my mask. And we live in a tourist area, and the tourists come down here, and it's like it's a jailbreak, man. None of them wear masks. They're all over the place. They don't social distance. And so we stay home
Right.
on the weekends when the tourists are here.
That's smart. That is smart, Tim. I actually saw something that popped up on my news feed this morning. It said there was a woman that reported her husband who had fully vaccinated, that both vaccines actually died recently of COVID. So, it's really strange. You don't know if they actually had COVID before they got the vaccine. She's saying he did not. She said he was tested beforehand, didn't have it, but something strange happened.
Well, yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Mychal, you got anything else for us?
No, that's about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom, and I appreciate the compliment.
Oh, for sure. Let's see. We got Paula Rietta Conway is on here this morning. She says, good morning. Hey, Paula, I hope you're doing well. Paula, I think, is in Arizona. Barbara Miller is in Birmingham. Morning, Barbara. I hope you're doing well this morning. So they just put some messages in the comment section. Right. So if you guys are good, we're going to move on and get to our guest because she's very interesting and probably got a lot to say this morning. And I know both of you guys are from Mobile, so we're going to listen to you guys talk a little bit about Mobile. So yes. Let's move to our sponsor message, and then we'll come back with Pat Eddington.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly Gossem, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Let's go to the G-List now, where everybody is a star. Remember, Hollywood has the A-list, and here on Tuesdays with Tom, we have the G-List. So I'm going to introduce you to Patricia Gentry Eddington. She is an Auburn University graduate. She has I'm just going to read some of the things she's been involved in and she's done. She was an administration appointee as a United States delegate to the 28th General Conference, UNESCO in Paris. She's been a White House appointee as a delegate to the 1995 White House Conference on Tourism, which developed plans for increasing tourism from Europe and Asia. Alabama Small Business Administration Advisory Board. President Jimmy Carter's appointee to the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, the corporate secretary of the Mobile Airport Authority. As such, she attended the Paris Air Show 5 times, participated in successful negotiations with Airbus for prospective assembly of the KC-45 aerial tanker in Mobile. She's been a member of the Democratic National Committee. And she was, I guess she probably still is, the first lady of Mobile. And she's in the Pritchard Hall of Fame. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. It's a real honor to be on your show. Yeah. I love watching it on Tuesdays. I always learn so much.
Well, you got smart people like Mychal and Barbara on here, and Emily and Sean, and they just let me go along for the ride. So what's happening with you?
Well, I'm staying busy.
Okay.
It's, I'm thankful for every day. Life is good. I stayed in. I'm still trying to stay in and wear my mask, and have had both of my shots. So I'm feeling very thankful.
Okay. Now you've been involved, and we're going to talk about Gulfstream here, but I want to talk a little bit about some of this other stuff. Man, you've been involved in a lot of, I guess, political stuff is the way to put it. Obviously, you're a Democrat. You were Alabama Democratic Party Executive Committee. You were vice chair. You were a member, a state committee woman for the Alabama Young Democrats, advanced staff for Hillary Clinton, advanced staff for Kitty Dukakis, worked with President Jimmy Carter.
That's enough. That's enough.
What got you interested in politics?
My sister told the newspaper once that I ran for president of the first grade. Politics. No, politics touches everything in our life. What you wear, what you eat, where you go, it touches everything. And I just think we all have a responsibility to be involved. I am a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, but I also strongly believe in a strong two-party system. I think we desperately need good Democrats, but we just as much we need good Republicans to make this nation run.
So you believe that the division that going on in the country now is not healthy for us?
That's not healthy. No, not at all. I can understand a different point of view because I have different points of view with some of my family members, certainly some of my friends, but I really think individually we have an opportunity to do what we can to make the system better.
Good deal. I agree with you. I remember, growing up, Alabama was a Democrat state.
Yes.
And I think it was like the mid 80s it started to change. And then all of a sudden, one day you woke up and all the Democrats were now Republicans. And the Democrats were trying to find some people out there. It was really interesting. And a lot of them were my friends. A lot of them, well, several of them I was doing work for in Birmingham. And matter of fact, one judge called me up and apologized to me. She said, but I'm going to change parties tomorrow, and I wanted to let you know. She said, that's the only way I can get reelected is if I change parties. And I said it was unfortunate, but we remained good friends. And that's sort of how all that occurred. So
well, I seldom argue politics. I live my politics. I don't discuss religion either. I live my religion. If you want to know what I think, watch me. I don't have to tell you. So
growing up, I told some guys this the other day, growing up in the era that I grew up in, your religion, your politics, and your money were private issues. You did not talk about them publicly. And we've sort of gotten away from that big time. So I tell you what, let me go to Mychal and Barbara, and then we're going to come back and talk about some Gulfstream.
Okay.
So Mychal, Barbara, you guys are here. Barbara, you got some questions for Pat?
I do.
You guys are both from Mobile.
We are, and I want to welcome my fellow Mobilian, my fellow Viger Highwool, and my fellow Auburn Tigers. So welcome this morning, Pat. Thank you so much for joining us. And we talked a little bit before the show started about you being a Viger graduate, CF Viger High. And
let me tell you, the light just went off in the room I'm on. I'm going to lean over and turn it on, okay?
I saw you. It went off, yeah.
Did it come back on?
I don't know.
Virginia, the light keeps going off.
It's okay. We can see you.
We can still see you.
I'm at my daughter's office in the little, to save electricity, the light goes off after you stay in for.
Okay.
But yes, I graduated from Viger, and okay, she told me I just need to wave my arm and it'll come on back on again. But I graduated from Viger, and of course then from Auburn, but many years ago. But I had good years there.
Wonderful. We talked a little bit about your claim to fame as a Viger High School graduate. Tell us about that story. You bringing Elvis to Viger High School?
That's my big story of my life. I mean, nothing else has ever happened. It's just that I brought Elvis to Viger. I walked into the principal's office and told him that I was supposed to have, was responsible for that particular Wednesday study hall. And I was with the newspaper, school newspaper. We could do whatever we wanted. We could raise money. We could have a talent show, whatever. But I couldn't come up with anything. So I said, you're going to have to do a study hall. And the young man standing there, one of the other graduates, said, oh, I was at the radio station yesterday, and there's a singer there named Elvis Presley. He's playing at the Greater Gulf State Fair, and he wanted an opportunity to play. He said, I bet I can get him. So he called. Anyway, called back and said, they'll be here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And Elvis drove up in his pink Cadillac and with two other guys, and they put the instruments in the back of the trunk. They opened up, and I walked out and greeted him. Of course, we didn't take pictures then.
Right.
But
wow.
And he went on the stage, and he was doing moves that many of us had never seen before. Our principal, who was in the audience, walked up on the stage and asked him to leave.
Are you serious?
I did, and he did leave. And the students were so mad. It's the one nowadays they would have rioted, but they didn't. They were just mad because they loved what he was doing.
Exactly. Wow.
That's amazing. I was going to say when you first started talking, I said, these days they probably wouldn't have even allowed him to come.
Probably not, yeah.
They kicked him out. Go ahead, Bob.
No, that's a fascinating story. That is awesome. I wish we had something as impressive happen while I was there at Viger. Nothing like that happened during my years there.
Well, I did see Elvis came to Auburn. I did see him at Auburn. We had great year. We had Elvis. We had, of course, the Commodores. We had the Temptations, the Fifth Dimension, the Supremes.
You talked about Muhammad Ali came when you were there.
Muhammad Ali was there. Yeah, Coretta Scott King. We had all kinds of Ted Kennedy. All kinds of people came, and the students were in charge of it, and that's who the students wanted to see and who they wanted to hear. Drove Dean Foy crazy, but when he said you guys can make your own decisions, that's what they did.
Exactly. And Mychal, I don't recall anyone that popular coming to Auburn while we were there. Do you?
Well, I do remember the Temptations coming. I saw them, although maybe that was before you got to Auburn because I was at Auburn High. So that's anything that happened, I got to visit. So all the shows that Thom are talking about, I was there.
Okay.
So
yes.
I went there, I guess, because I was there in the city. So I remember the Fifth Dimension and the Temptations, and of course the Commodores were right down the street, so they were up all the time.
All the time. I do remember that.
You could go see the Commodores for 75 cents.
Yes.
At Logan Hall on the Tuskegee campus. We went, and we didn't have the 75 cents, so we went around to the side of the building and climbed up the wall and got in the window. And that's how we saw the Commodore.
Wow.
The only ones I remember that came were the Kingston Trio, and they did a performance, and I love them.
Well, I have to say my favorite celebrity that came to Auburn was Jane Kennedy. I don't know if you were there, Thom, but Jane Kennedy came there, so that was my favorite.
But I will tell you about the Fifth Dimension. because we'd had a great football season when we'd beat Alabama and all that stuff. So they let us sit on the front row at the Fifth Dimension concert. And Marilyn McCoo came down off the stage and got me and took me up on the stage to dance with her. And, you know, I'm still talking about it all these many years later.
That was big.
Oh, go ahead, Mychal.
Okay. Pat, good morning, and thanks for being here with us. And there's an awful lot that you've done here in your resume here, but I want to talk to you about your company, Heirloom Appraisals, and the appraisal work that you do for banks and insurance companies, and more specifically insurance, because I happen to be in it. And one of the questions I wanted to ask, how do you get involved in the appraisal part of the business for the insurance company? And the reason why I ask is, you know, when you get a homeowner's policy for insurance, they put a cap on how much you can be reimbursed for jewelry. If it's stolen, that's like $2,500, unless you get a separate rider or a schedule that will cover it. So explain that to us, how you help insurance companies.
I really took a hobby. I mean, I've loved antiques. I love history. It was 1976, how long that was. I took a hobby and decided that I knew enough, and I was wrong, about antiques that I could be an appraiser. I knew a woman who was one, and I thought, I know as much as she does. Well, I didn't. And but anyway, I just continued to study, and you learn by doing. Nowadays, I seldom see anything, well, for a long time, that I haven't seen before. But I'm always thrilled to see something I've never seen before, because then I get to go do research on it. And, you know, there's so much on, I mean, you don't have to look in books. I have, I don't know, a whole bookcase full of books, and I never open them anymore because you turn on my smartphone and look it up. Yes. And just yesterday, somebody had given a painting to an agency, and they wanted me to look it up. And I don't think it's very much, but anyway, I spent half an hour looking it up. It was worth about $50, so I was right, but it didn't look like much. But I'm still doing not a lot of appraisals because I took my name out of the yellow pages, because mostly I was getting junk. And so now I just get calls from insurance companies or lawyers, mostly lawyers, send me to have an estate. And you know, somebody yesterday called and they have coins. I probably won't do those, but they have other stuff too. So I'll go look at their antique rugs.
So now when you do the appraisal, do you give them like a certified appraisal? You have a form to fill out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And of course I have a license. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have my stationery, and it all looks very official.
Okay. All right. Fantastic then. I want to switch a little bit, and we'll come back to Barbara, but I notice all the work that you've done in the Democratic Party. But one night you held a fundraiser at your home, and you raised about $250,000 in one night. Tell me how you accomplished that. Tell me how you accomplished that feat of raising $250,000 in one night.
Well, I've been pretty good at raising money. I live in a retirement village in Spanish Fort, and I'm in charge of raising money for the foundation that we have there. And just yesterday, I was working on our revolving cocktail party, and but raising money has been sort of easy for me. You have to believe in what you're doing, and or in the person. And so I don't think it was quite $1 million, but I mean, what did you say?
It was $250,000 that you raised.
Right. Yes, that was for Hillary. So,
yes.
Well, I was fortunate that I had Hillary, and then President Clinton twice to my home for fundraisers. And
Oh,
Good deal.
that is a good deal.
Well, in order to do that, you have to know people, because from what I understand, you had people paying $5,000 and $400 a piece to come. So you had to know where to go find those pockets of people that could afford that and send them an invite.
in fundraising, you go back to the same people. You might pick up a new one every once in a while. But fundraising, that's the reason you get all those calls from various agencies, is that, you have given before. And okay, you gave $10 one time, they're going to come back and another 10. And I mean, y'all know that. You get all the emails, all the calls. So, and if you give them once, they're going to call you over and over and over.
Oh, yes.
Let me come back in, and then we'll all ask questions. But I want to get Pat to talk about a film script that she's written called Gulfstream, and it's a great story. And we have been, me and another guy who I work with, George McMillan, have been working with Pat to get her film out there. And Pat, why don't you tell us a little bit about, first of all, what motivated you to write it, and then let's talk about the story.
Well, at Auburn, I graduated in journalism, and I really thought I would be a photojournalist. But I've, done some writing. But at age 81, I decided I would write this film script that I'm hoping somebody will pick up and make a movie out of. The movie is based on a book written in 1930 by Marie Stanley. It's fictional, but it could so easily be true. It takes place in Mobile. Again, it's a fictional story, but it takes place in an area called Sandtown. And most Mobilians know Sandtown. It's an African-American, about 150-year-old African-American community in the Spring Hill area. Only 3 streets. Well, when my husband and I first married, we bought a new house that was at the end of one of those streets. And so I got to know all of my neighbors. And I, somewhere along the line, heard about the book that was written about a young woman, a fictional young woman who lived in Sandtown. And so when I found the book in a garage sale for $1, I think, 40 years ago, I read it. And several years ago, reread the book again, pulled it off my bookshelf and read it and said, this needs to be a movie. And after talking to a number of people, I finally decided I will write the screenplay for it. And so at age 81, I wrote my first one. Now, and it's copyrighted. I have a second one, and I'm working on 2 more. So I don't plan on stopping. Okay. But I think you asking me the storyline. It's an African-American mixed race. It starts off, she's 16, she's beautiful. Her mother had an affair with a Frenchman who came to town. And then the mother died when she was giving birth. And Adele was raised by her aunt. And then when Adele was 16, she did the same thing her mother had done. She had a love affair with the rich kid who lived nearby. Her aunt had done laundry for them, and she met him while delivering the laundry. Anyway, she becomes pregnant, and of course, he has nothing to do with her after that. And so the story goes on for the rest of her life. But anyway, I think it's a good story, and Thom has been nice enough to read it and think that it has possibilities.
I think it's a great story. The woman is, and I think particularly Black people are familiar with this. she is fair-skinned enough to pass, and that's what she is in. She debates whether or not she wants to move up north, where she could pass and perhaps marry a white man who wouldn't know that she is part African American.
Wow.
And it's a really good story. There is a movie being made by a book that has some similarity. I think the book's called Passing. But people who know about those are pretty familiar with that. It's a drama that sort of tears at your heart because of the young woman and what she wants, she'll never have. And then her daughter, there's a climactic part when the daughter comes to live with her, or when they finally live together. She wouldn't even live with her daughter for the longest. And when they finally live together, and the father of the daughter actually meets his daughter with his white daughter. So he has two daughters. One he's never claimed. One he's had through marriage. And there's a climactic scene there that I think is pretty explosive. So we have pretty aggressive. You know, when you run for office in the first grade, you don't stop as life goes on. And so she has reached out to Reese Witherspoon and to other people, and we're hoping to have some good luck here. It takes, in this business, it takes luck. I worked with a guy who won an Oscar for the movie Crash, and he oftentimes reminds me that it took them 8 years to get that movie made. And the reason it took them 8 years is because everybody turned them down. And then finally one person said, you know what, I think there's something there. I want to help you make that movie. And so we're looking for that one person out there who wants to help us make this movie. Let me do some quick shout outs. Leanne Trippett says hello. Brian Belcher from Leesburg, West Virginia, wishes us well. So Michael, Barbara, you want to go back to go talk to Pat about Gulfstream?
Well, I wanted to ask it, not necessarily Gulfstream. I had another question, but it's kind of dealing with that. Pat, you welcomed NATO ships into Mobile, and everybody's familiar with NATO. Could you tell us about that?
Well, my husband, who recently died, was for 60 years in charge of the Navy ships that came into Mobile for Mardi Gras. And one year we did have the NATO ships. And I think there were 7 that year, which was quite exciting for Mobile. But that's the best I can tell you. They came at Mardi Gras. And Navy ships have been coming to Mardi Gras since 1898. The only time they haven't come is during war.
Okay. Now, Mobile is, what is it? Is it the second or third largest port in the U.S.? It's a pretty large port. Which is
no, but it's up there. At one point, it was the 6th largest. It's not quite, but we have a lot of activity in our port. Thank goodness.
We do.
Barbara?
Yes, I was going to say I would love to read the screenplay for Gulfstream. It sounds so wonderful, and I would be super excited if it actually makes it to the movie screen. So that's going to be one that I'll be looking forward to, Pat. And sounds like your other screenplays that you have in the works are just as good. So I'm just waiting, anticipating that.
A whole new career at age 81.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But I want to shift gears just a little bit. One of the things I want to talk about is Penelope House. I see that you're on the board of directors for Penelope House. Can you tell us our viewers a little bit about that organization and what it means?
Penelope House was the first battered women's shelter in the South, certainly the first in Alabama. But I have been on that board almost 40 years now.
Wow.
And my daughter has come along after me. She's been on for 10 years. But it's a wonderful service to the people in Lower Alabama.
Yes. Great. Thank you for the work that you're doing there. That sounds like something that's definitely needed. And you know, I wish that there were probably branches of that all over the country, because they're doing a wonderful job there in the Mobile area.
Well, and it's constant fundraising too. I mean, I have to use all of my fundraising skills there. And that's one of my priorities, because it does serve such a need.
Yes, yes, great. Thank you.
Pat, we've got Leanne Trippett says, I'm sure that's one of your friends. She says, thank you for sharing Pat Eddington's story with us. Pamela Smith, thank you for promoting our friend and Alabama treasure, Pat Eddington. Love Pamela. And Bob Zellner. And Bob, we hope to get you on the show. And I had a little small part in your film, Son of the South. And Barry Brown's going to be on the show. I communicated with Barry yesterday, and so Barry will be on our show as well. So we look forward to seeing you guys.
I want to put in a plug for you, because I recently saw you in Son of the South, and which is the story of Bob Zellner's life and his participation in civil rights in the 50s and 60s. But Bob and Pamela are good friends, and I'm thrilled they're watching. But the movie Son of the South, which Thom Gossom is in, I really recommend it. And yes.
Well, they did a good job. And I'm always proud when something's shot in Alabama, and it was shot in and around Montgomery and Tuskegee. So, any other questions?
Yes, I would like to ask Pat, you know, with all the work you did in the Democratic Party behind the scenes and raising money, and certainly having that Rolodex, why did you not run for office?
Oh, I did.
Did you? Okay. And which office did you run for?
I didn't get but 20% of the vote. Wow. No, so I did. I think it's more important and I loved running for office. Of course, my husband was in the state legislature for 12 years. He was elected the same time that George Wallace was. And we stood behind, we were a few seats behind George Wallace on that inauguration day, when he, threw down the gauntlet and segregation now, segregation forever. And so those were sort of interesting years, that the 12 years that Robert served in the House and the Senate, and with George Wallace as the governor most of that time.
That must have been interesting to be right behind him when he threw down the gauntlet. How did you feel? What went through your mind?
We were not Wallace supporters. Not at all. Of course, we weren't surprised. By then we knew him. Since then, his daughter, who you should have on your show, Peggy Wallace Kennedy, she has written her own book. But
That's right.
She was, yes. Mark and Peggy Kennedy are good friends, but she was a little girl, and she knows that we didn't support her father, but we've become very, very good friends, and we've often talked about those years and when her father was governor.
Yes, I had it was an unpleasant opportunity, but yet and still it was something that happened. Juanita Abernathy, when she passed away and her funeral was here in Atlanta, she and I served on the MARTA board of directors together. And George Wallace's daughter attended the funeral and spoke at Juanita's funeral, along with other celebrities and dignitaries of the civil rights movement. And for that time right there, you got an opportunity to see inside his daughter and how she felt and what have you. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, she's quite outspoken about her feelings then and now.
Yes,
That's great.
absolutely.
It's,
Yeah.
He was an interesting man.
Mhm.
He would come to, we would fly out of Montgomery for away games, and we would bus up to Montgomery, and after he had been shot, he would see us off at the airport. And of course, and at that time on Auburn's team, there were 3 black athletes. And so it was a big deal for my white teammates to say, ask Gossem, you gonna shake his hand? Because I was the radical on the team, which I wasn't really a radical. I just had a thought in my head, and that made me radical.
Right.
But of course I'm going to shake his hand. He's the governor. I'm not going to walk up there and not shake his hand, because then I probably won't get to play.
Smart guy. Right.
But he did. And then once after we played Alabama, I was sitting in my little stall in the locker room, and he came by, and I don't know what this means to this day, but he tapped me on the shoulder and he shook my hand and he said, "Believe it or not, I'm on your side."
Interesting.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And he walked off. So, I don't know. I had interesting encounters with the governor over the time. And when the first year, Love Scales, black girl, was made a homecoming queen at Auburn, and Wallace had to come up and crown her, and he did it with no bad intent, So it was interesting watching him throw down the gauntlet, and then my actual encounters with him were a little bit different. So. Anyway, we got anything? Anybody got anything else, Barbara?
Yes, Pat, I was going to ask Pat about, she's been involved with the Mobile Preservation Society and historic preservation there in the Mobile and in Alabama. And I see that you were involved in determining the historic paint colors for Mobile. Tell us a little bit about that whole process.
That's a little known fact. But, I was noticed at a paint store that, Natchez, everybody had their own paint chart. And so I decided at the time I was an officer with the Mobile Historic Commission. I was their interim director. So I decided to go around all the buildings being torn down with a little knife and an envelope and chip away at paint colors. And then I went to Mobile Paint Company and gave them all my research, and thus the Mobile paint chart.
Wow. That's fascinating. Very impressive.
I'm hoping they made a lot of money off of it. I'm told they are.
I'm sure.
Just from my chips, and they put it on a computer, and I named them all Mobile names of Mobile streets.
Okay.
Well, Pat, I know you've ridden Gulfstream, and I think it has a $3 million budget. I'm just putting that out there for anybody who's listening, watching, what have you. Quite frankly, I've looked at the budget, and we talked about the budget, and I think the budget can be about $2 million, because we don't have a lot of locations. We don't have a lot of the costly things. And I tell you, I just worked on a film up in North Carolina, and this film was shot with a really small crew. It was very mobile. We shot it differently than anything I've ever shot, because we just shot we wouldn't even shoot a whole scene. We would shoot little segments of the scene, and then he'd put them together. And so I think there's a way to get the numbers down. I think as the COVID protocols are lifting somewhat, it makes people a little less afraid to work in that environment. You know, you do have to do some things. You have to distance the actors. Everybody wore a mask when we weren't shooting. And then actors would take their mask off when it was time to shoot. And so there are some possibilities now. And I do think one of the things, I think you can pretty much take one area and shoot the whole thing. You don't have to, you know, the other film you showed me, the other script requires a ship and being on the water and all that. That's expensive. That would cost a ton of money. So we'll see. So you say you're working on a couple of others. What else are you working on?
Well, the other one is based on a book written in Mississippi in 1877, and that is a hard one. It's called the Chisholm Massacre. Gosh, Mississippi in 1877 was just terrible. I mean, they were burning down of course, it was a big push for education of poor whites and blacks. And as soon as they built a school, they'd burn it down. And so that one is a hard one, but I'm working on it.
Wow.
And the other one is a nurse from Mobile. No, she wasn't a nurse. She became a nurse. Wrote a book. She participated in Civil War, and she wrote a book. And I started. That was the first one I started on. But you know, there's not that much interest in the Civil War now, fortunately or unfortunately. So, but I'm staying busy with the last two, and then hoping something will happen with the first two. And as Thom knows, there's a little bit of interest now, and so we're just trying to pull out.
We'll see. It takes
interest.
Far more time than you would think. So, but we will see. We will see. Anybody got anything else they want to share with us? Pat, you got anything you want to share that we haven't talked about?
Oh, I don't think so. I think we've talked about everything.
Okay. Barbara, Mychal, you guys okay?
Well,
Okay.
I'd just like to say thank you, Pat, for coming to visit with us. And I want to commend you on raising $1.3 million between the years of 1983 and 84 for the American Cancer Society. It was 15% more than any money that had been raised at that time. So hats off to you for that.
That was my first big fundraising effort, and I still want to be very supportive of the American Cancer Society because so much of their money does, you know, it goes where it should go. And
Yes.
but thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to move on to our conclusion, my closing comments as I see it. I spoke earlier about my dad. My dad is actually in the hospital. Hopefully he'll be getting out soon. Hopefully he'll be okay. If you've got a few extra prayers that you're not using, then please send them up for my dad. Thank you very much. And so that's our show. It's a wrap. We want to thank you all, and I need to tell you about I want to thank Mychal, Barbara, Pat Eddington. I want to tell you about our upcoming guest next week. Will be Mr. Stefan Deming. I call him Mr. Hollywood. He is a hairstylist in Hollywood. Stefan has worked on every major actress in Hollywood, and he and I have worked together on In the Heat of the Night, Miss Evers' Boys, City of Angels. We worked on Son of the South together. So we've worked together for many, many years, and I look forward. We've had a lot of fun. We have a lot of stories that we can't talk about, but we're going to have a good time next week. So Stefan Deming will be on next week. I want to thank our sponsors, Best Girl. If you're interested in having your business to be a sponsor, let us know. And I think we have some sponsors coming up. Emily has put up how you can follow Best Girl, and I think that's in 2 different places. So I don't have to. Do I have to read this? I don't think so. Anyway, thank Emily Hedrick. Emily is our producer. She's the communicator. Sean Jones is the organizer. I will remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe, and peace.